had happened over the same 16 years. Isn't that fair? Okay. And what are those? Let me tickle your fancy a little bit. I'm sure many of you know, but many is not clear to many. That the truth is that in the last 16 years of government by the PDP, the economy of Nigeria more than doubled. The size of the economy of the GDP more than doubled. In fact, with a year-on-year average growth rate of 6% per annum, the economy more than doubled in the last 12 years. I can see people nodding there. You get the arithmetic. Take any number for that matter and keep growing it by 6%. At the 12th year, the number would have been slightly more than doubled. And so from 2003 till last year, the economy has been growing at slightly over 6% per annum on the average. And so the GDP that we have today, at $550 billion economy, that's what PDP has handed over to APC. So that's the base you're starting from in terms of the economy. We must get it right. And my challenge, therefore, for the sake of Nigeria, is that the APC should now frame their intervention on the economy with a target to say, in the next 12 years, we must double $550 billion to become $1.1 billion economy and reduce poverty by half. If they can do that, Nigeria will surely be on the road to be one of the 7 largest economies by the end of this century. That's what we meant. Let's go to all the other indicators and so on and so forth. You can get to all the indicators that happened, even on corruption. When PDP took over in 1999, Nigeria's score by Transparency International was 1.6, and we were 98 out of 99 countries. Somebody said we bribed the last one. We were 98 out of 99. As at the last Transparency International, we were 2.7 and rated 136 out of 178. Slight improvement. So it could have been much better. But still, this is where we started. This is where they started. This is where they are handing the baton. And sooner or later, we'll be asking for the current party's own scores. It's not grammar, it is scores. Nigeria was a pariah state. We were on the FATF non-compliant nations on anti-money laundering. We were basically a pariah state. The oil price on the month that President Obasanjo took over was $15.24 a barrel. I repeat, $15.24. That's the average monthly price for the month of May 1999. Foreign reserve was about $5 billion. So if you take it in context and you cascade to today, when they are living, NBS published a new unemployment figure of 7.5, even though underemployment is much higher. We have poverty rate that still debate. The former Minister of Finance said 32. NBS is saying 61. We don't know. They need to clarify that. But look at the internet ICT penetration from 0.2 to over 60% today. Even Gini coefficient, the degree of inequality in Nigeria, is not anything different from that of China. Believe it or not. It's not significantly different from China's. We are rated now for the first time by Fitch and Standard & Poor's. Nigeria now has, the stock market that was below 1 trillion in capitalization, handed over about 12 trillion, and so on and so forth. He created the 2 institutions for anti-corruption stuff and so on. Now the debt relief, that the new APC government no longer needs to negotiate with the World Bank on every policy platform. This is what APC inherited. This is where they are starting. You can't measure change without saying the baseline. And I've tried to, we can go on and on and on and on all aspects of it. So because over time, Nigerians will be asking APC, show us your own figures. Show us your figures. I've tried to put this in context. APC, what the PDP government 16 years put, I'm being very charitable. Even though I have argued and I still believe that the last 5 years, the years of the last government, comparatively, compared to the past, was the worst in our history in terms of economic management, relative to the resources available to it. We should have had more than $100 billion in reserves. Far more than 100. In fact, my calculation was that between 102 to 118 billion. Yes, they left 30. Miserable. But still, it's about 6 times what they met. So I just put all this in context. It's been terrible. We should have been far up higher. They are leaving us here, but they started 100 feet below. And it is in this kind of putting it in relativities, that we begin to appreciate the task that is ahead. I go to what I call avoiding the mistakes of the old Buharinomics now. Having now set the stage, where do we go from now, from here? In terms of going forward. We have had this government in place for the last couple of months. I am convinced that President Buhari, Nigeria needs his moral and Spartan discipline and leadership at this point in time, especially in bringing the country back from almost like a brink of moral collapse. Discipline, fighting corruption, and steering back the country, rescuing us from the precipice. We need all of those. But my only point, and I pray earnestly, is that on the economy, the president and the presidency may have to learn very fast. There must be a personal transformation here from the old to the new. We say that there's a proverb that you don't learn to use the old hand, the left hand at old age. But this one I pray that he must have to. Most leaders around the world go through this personal transformation. All of us also have done so. Personally, I've made a career of books and articles as an unrepentant critic of the IMF, World Bank, structural and government programs, and Africa, and so on. But I remain a pragmatic intellectual who will learn quickly, but from a solid economics and experiences and evidence around the world in terms of what works and what doesn't work. The tension that I see mostly is that we in Nigeria are still going back. There seems to be a perception of a sense of nostalgia. Somebody is still reminiscing about the good old days. I see this thing about this command and control regime battling with what is required in a competitive market economy framework. They seem to be incomplete, and I'm going to illustrate in a few minutes. Even China, Russia, India, and so on, they're all making the transitions and making it pretty very big. They all used to have this kind of draconian stuff. What are the elements of this old Buharinomics that I think we need to begin to see how we change from? If you see, in the first coming of Mr. President, 84, 85, he inherited a command and control structure, fixed exchange rate, fixed capital controls, import, kinds of import bans, forex rationing, or even rationing food. I learned even at that time, sometimes it was a crime to be found in possession of foreign exchange, as the case may be. And government owned all the commanding heights and so on and so forth. He inherited them and deepened them. In the face of external shocks, terms of trade shocks, we did not allow relative prices to adjust. And what then happened was that quantities adjusted. The economy imploded big time. The gamut of fixing prices and trying to now sustain that by massive controls and bans and so on and so forth led the economy to implode massively. Unemployment escalated, poverty escalated, and so on and so forth. The economy was on the brink of bankruptcy, basically. We couldn't service our national debt and so on and so forth. 86, we started this unbundling, a liberalization regime. Every statistics from the National Bureau of Statistics indicates if you take the era of 1981 to 91 and divide this era into two regimes, the fixed control regime era and the liberal era, the fixed regime of 81 to 85 and the more liberal era of 86 to 91. From data from the National Bureau of Statistics, the economy did better on all counts, including poverty, even inflation. And I want to say that this old way of doing it has been tried and tested. It has been tried and failed. And we don't need to go back to it. Since 86, we've embarked on flexible prices, more liberal regime, interrupted with by the Abacha's controlled deregulation of the 90s, and of course we had zero per capita income growth in the 90s. The 90s is the decade of stagnation in Nigeria. Under that, still under the same lower prices. And so what I say is, again back, later this year, we've seen almost like a near return of a variant of that same policy regime.